Hiding.
Okay,
Sorry, folks.
that's okay. So welcome everyone to the regular board meeting for the Qualicum School District, May 26th. And as folks know, the recording is a part of our meetings and they will be then on YouTube. I'd like to acknowledge first off that we are meeting today and our school district resides on the traditional territory of the Snaawis and Qualicum First Nations. And we thank them for allowing us to learn and live and play in this beautiful part of Vancouver Island. Board members, we'll start into our agenda for this evening. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please? So move trustee Young, seconded trustee Kurland. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And approval of the consent agenda for this evening. Ministry notes, some minutes and reports of the early years coalition by trustee Young. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by trustee Young, seconded by trustee Kellogg. All those in favor? Carried. I think I saw, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Denise Augustine, I believe. I didn't exactly pin you, but maybe I should have. Ms. Augustine is the secretary to the Indigenous Education Council for the school district. And they have asked to speak to the board meeting this evening as a delegation on Indigenous priorities. So Denise, I'll turn it over to you.
I also see Steve Racalma is on here.
Okay, I do see Steve. Okay. Steve, are you going to speak to the priorities, or Denise? I call upon you both and welcome and thank you for attending.
Yeah, I'm busy driving around right now, so I'm not going to be reading.
Okay, but welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate your presentation already this evening. I kind of, the board's had a sneak preview, so it's kind of, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder though. So Ms. Augustine, then are you presenting then on behalf of the Education Council?
I would be pleased to. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And it's a privilege to be here and have this opportunity to speak on behalf of the IEC. I'm glad to hear that you've received the document and have had a look at that. And please know that the IEC, maybe I should introduce myself first. Anthaput Swialt, Tanitsan Alt Minas. My Hulkaminam name is Swialt. My family's registered with Chemainus First Nation, and I'm working alongside the IEC to offer some guidance and support. As you can imagine, it's a big job and it's a big shift in the role of Indigenous people in working with school districts. So, so one of the things that the IEC did, I'm not officially a member of the IEC, just to be clear. I'm just working alongside them. And from time to time, I have the privilege of doing this kind of thing. So I will present their priorities. The IEC spent a lot of time working with, in particular, Katie, looking over student data, talking to the members of their community, and to come up with 3 priorities that we hope that you will receive and work with us in meeting and working towards. The first one is about safety and belonging for staff and students. And this was really clearly the top priority for the Indigenous Education Council members. And part of that is a recognition that not all staff have the capacity. They don't all have the skills and knowledge necessary to really create safe spaces. And so a call to the school district to provide training for everybody so that they can adequately learn from and incorporate Snanaas and Qualicum First Nation traditions, and recognize and appropriately respond to racism and prejudice targeted towards Indigenous students and staff, and recognizing too that this this work isn't just the job of the Indigenous Ed staff, but it's everybody's work. And then you'll notice the third bullet there is that it's not only, we recognize it's not only about Snanaas and Qualicum First Nations, Indigenous people or First Nations people, but also all Indigenous learners. Are we good? I heard it just a sec.
I'm wondering, this wasn't circulated in the package of our board agenda. I'm wondering, can you screen share so folks can follow, as this we have a number of people who are not
Sure,
familiar with.
I'm also happy just to speak to it, even if that's okay.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely,
and then send it out afterwards. So there, I'll just give everyone an overview
Yeah.
though. There are
Yeah.
3 priorities listed. The first one
Okay.
is safety and belonging for staff and students, that being the top priority. The next one is language and culture awareness. And the third one is academics, of course, remaining critically important. And so I've spoken to the first one.
yeah, it's when you go to bullet 3 and things like that,
Yeah, sorry,
you know,
I won't do that
people
anymore.
don't.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
know, you're a presenter, you got it.
The next one is the next priority, and these were like really clear from the IEC, is about language and culture awareness, and I'm sure they're not going to be a surprise to you either. Is prioritizing the local use of locally developed resources and involve local knowledge keepers so that Snanaas and Qualicum First Nations historical and contemporary knowledges are accurately reflected in the learning experiences of students. And I know that Katie and her team have worked hard to provide some very rich resources, and the IEC has been involved in viewing those and supporting the work that group has done. And then the third priority is academics, and the statement at the top of this one is academics remain critically important. And there was conversation about, you know, one of the main roles of our public schools, or our expectations of the public school system is that our students come out fully literate and numerate and able to choose whatever path they want in their life going forward. And so the IEC identified that we want to continue focusing and improving Indigenous student academic achievement, and certainly recognize that already a lot of great work is happening in the district for Indigenous students, and they achieve above the average provincially. We're just not, you know, what we heard from the IEC is that that's great and that's really noteworthy, and we don't want to stop there. And then also there's been lots of conversation about making sure that targeted funds are targeted for Indigenous students and not appropriated to supplement academic programs that are the core responsibility of the district. And I don't think any of this is new. The IEC recommends that the school district use targeted funds to ensure Indigenous students and staff feel safe. In addition, the funds should be used to support language and culture learning, fostering a sense of belonging. So they're all tied, even though they're identified as 3 separate items. Really, we recognize that they're all weaved together. This will in turn facilitate academic success. And then we recommend that the school district use data gathered to date, the equity scan, FSA, et cetera, for comparison to current performance in regards to the priorities above. We also recommend that the school district report progress in each priority area semi-annually, for instance, November and May, but that, you know, whatever makes sense for staff. And then, you know, there's a request that folks note that the IEC is looking to better understand what the district is doing to improve educational experiences and outcomes for Indigenous learners beyond the work of the Indigenous education team. And so there's been lots of conversation that, yes, the Indigenous education team is just going above and beyond and making significant changes, and also recognizing that, again, this is everybody's work. And so an invitation and a request, a recommendation that the district look at that. So those are the priorities. And I think that, you know, we we see that they connect with your strategic plan and hope that you see that as well. Certainly open to any questions, not necessarily that I'll be able to answer them because I'm not the IEC, but happy to take them back to the council if there's questions or comments from the group.
Thanks very much, Denise. I think when we had our meeting together, I was very encouraged that the overarching, I think, outlook of the council is if we raise Indigenous children up, we raise all children up. And this is all about every child matters. And this is, yes, it goes on a t-shirt and things like that, but it's a bit of a deeper dive and a deeper goal for all of us to encompass in the education of our students in the district. And I appreciate that. I see Trustee Young has her hand up. Trustee Young.
Yeah, I was going to say approximately the same thing. So thank you very much for the meeting that we had together. It's always a great pleasure to me. And the Education Committee report tonight does include the section that we had on some of the resources that are coming out. And I'll speak more to that when we get there. But just please pass on my gratitude for the work that you've done with the IEC. And also, I attended a drum circle at Springwood. And I believe that these drum circles are happening throughout the district. So I think the next one, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's at Arrowview on the 29th, and it is open to the public. It is a fabulous, fabulous place to be. So take a look at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Elaine.
Any other questions or comments, trustees? Seeing none, thank you very much, Denise and Steve. I hope you've not driven off the road and that possibly you're home safely. And thank you very much for your time tonight. I think it's important that we hear from you definitely at this board. This is a public meeting, a board meeting held in public. And so it's nice when it's able to have other listeners other than those of us who are on another track with the committee as invited guests. And so I appreciate your time tonight. And thank you very much. Okay, a business arising from the minutes, as I have no questions that have been submitted formally to the board today. I would look to business arising now to the 26-27 school calendar. And this is the work of our Associate Superintendent, Ms. Wilson, and our conversation with the MATA. And so I'll allow you to open up first. And we have a motion this evening, trustees, to approve the school calendar for the revision to the school calendar because we've done multiple year calendars in the past, and this is a revision to the 26-27 calendar. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Flynn. If you recall from our last board meeting, this was a bit of an oops in looking at when we start our school year next year, and semester 1 and semester 2 were not going to be equal. So we've adjusted what we call the semester change date a week later to make sure that both semesters are balanced. So because we have to go through public consultation, we brought it up at the last board meeting. It's gone to the staff committees at the schools, and they're both in support. So I just wanted to bring it back formally to trustees to vote on that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. So could I have a mover and a seconder for the Board of Education District 69 approve the revisions of the secondary semester change date on the 26-27 school calendar? Thank you, Trustee Young, seconded Trustee Kellogg. All those in favor? Carried. And now we'll move to Mount Arrowsmith Teachers Association and Mr. Mickelwood. Over to you.
Hi, Eve. Thank you. Good evening. Hi, Awana, and bonsoir, everyone. On May 12th, the Mount Arrowsmith Teachers Association held its annual general meeting. This year's AGM had a large turnout of members where we shared union developments, celebrated retired and retiring teachers, shared a great meal, but most importantly, we held elections. This year, we have elected several new table officers. I'm pleased to report the following table officers that will make up our 2026 and 27 executive. They are Jen Picard, who was elected president. Katie Tickell was re-elected as vice president. Dennis Mousseau was elected second vice president. Amanda Young has been elected to our local representatives to the BCTF. Kaz Tomiyama, probably our longest serving executive member, has been re-elected as treasurer, and Michelle Beasley was elected as secretary. Reacclaimed positions include Greg Lewis as our in-district Pro D chair, Danny Hall as our political action chair, Lauren Mitchell as our social justice chair, Justine Swanson as the health and safety chair, and Melanie Switzer as our TTOC chair. I'd also like to welcome back Denise Spencer-Dahl, who will be our Pro D chair. Norberta Heinrichs will be our bargaining chair, and Mark Below will be our French as a first and working language contact. Also want to welcome our newly elected members, Jessica Anderegg and Joanna Biddlecombe. They will be our Truth and Reconciliation co-chairs. And we have new teachers in Corey Clausen and David Biagioni will be our members at large. All these folks will begin their term starting July 1st. Finally, I want to thank Taylor Wilson and Julie Cloutier for their time and commitment to support the union. Also, a special thank you to Carrie Faw for her dedication and professionalism that exemplified union leadership as a second VP, and her continued advocacy for members at her school site. Their time and commitment to support MATA members has been greatly appreciated, and we wish them all the best in next year's executive. On May 14th, MATA held its last in-district professional Pro D Day. Members met at Ballina Secondary to listen to Hannah Beach speak about strategies that support teachers by bringing a trauma-informed lens into the classroom. Following her keynote, educators participated in follow-up sessions that supported each teacher's individual choices and personal needs. A big thank you to Greg Lewis for planning such a great district-wide session. That's never easy, and his team as well. Finally, we're here for the budget. MATA appreciates the many opportunities that the district makes available to provide input to the budget process. The work of Secretary Treasurer Ron Amos is very much appreciated, and his time and patience in answering budgetary questions is highly valued. My critique of the budget tonight is not a reflection of his work. It is rather recognition of the difficult job that he has. To begin, declining enrollments are not good for school districts, especially teaching staff. Again, the bulk of the deficit is going to be addressed by slashing teacher positions or reducing those positions. Just to be clear, when a district chooses to reduce a position, such as a learning services position, with anything less than full-time, they are asking that teacher to complete the same amount of work in less time and for less money. As an extra bonus, the teacher would also need to prioritize their workload, because that is what my advice would be. And this advice places teachers usually in an uncomfortable situation where they have to choose which students to help over others. We know that people who choose education choose it as a means to help all students. Therefore, I believe declining enrollment is simply an excuse for the ministry to provide less funding to a district while demanding its trustees and administrators develop a budgetary solution to meet the same demands of the system. According to the budget being presented tonight, 100 students equals $800,000 in lost funding. We all know that amount of money is not directly connected to any one program or any one cost. When you lose 2 or 3 students from a classroom, all the costs stay the same. Even if the district were not to count the declining enrollment, we would still be sitting at a $700,000 deficit. We are simply living in a budget dystopia cycle. Budgets are being discussed and passed, but they actually do not support the system. In fact, the budget presented tonight only serves to appease the ministry. How can cutting learning services and counseling be supportive of education? Secretary Treasurer Amos has been detailed in describing these deficits as a result of inflationary costs, entitled benefit costs, and costs associated with collective agreements. Also, he has included the costs, that these costs are the expectations that, also included in these costs are the expectations that school districts feed children, feed families, provide childcare, in addition to before and after school care, update technology, provide busing, and fund all the infrastructure to simply support the physical buildings. To cover these extra costs, boards have had to get creative and offer programs that bring in extra money, like the International Student Program. So what is my point? My point is public schools have a funding problem. It's not teachers. They spend countless hours finding resources, completing district and provincial assessments. They work with teams of educators to find necessary supports for students. They spend their own money on classroom supplies, and all this to ensure that all students are included. They advocate for music, for art, for ADST, for outdoor education classes, and these are some of the ones that sometimes get cut when the money gets tight. It is not educational assistance. They're being asked to work with multiple challenging students and are doing the best they can. Plus, there's not enough of them, and this budget will cut more. It is not administrators. They are given class allotments they must adhere to. They are being asked to teach more while given less time to administrate. They are working hard to support their staff, but are given less money to do so. It is not parents. They volunteer their time to be in classrooms, to be on school packs. They financially support the system by paying yearly student fees. They send us their best, and we do our best to provide an education for all, despite these conditions. It is an underfunded public education system. We accept and include all who show up at our door. We are professional, we are educated, we are compassionate, and we are giving, and we care. As a public education system, we accept our most vulnerable population of students and our most socioeconomically challenged parents. They deserve a system that not only supports their needs, but supports the needs of all students. This takes human contact. We are in the relationship business, and it is people that can provide that support. More of them, not less. If you're at the special board meeting on this budget, you may have heard Norberta Heinrichs, our local school counselor and president of the Counselors Association of BC. She spoke passionately about the importance of counseling in schools and the effects it has on students. This budget is proposing we cut 4.1 teachers. It's proposing we reduce FTE of learning services teachers and counselors. Again, asking them to do more with less, which also includes money. And we are reducing EA support. This supports a ministry-required district budget, but doesn't support the needs of the system. I said that last year, and I will say it again. This type of thinking makes me feel that we are participating in a functional budget dystopia. We need to get our priorities aligned so that teachers and educational staff are supported in order to support students. It is unattainable to want to support students without first supporting teachers and anyone who works with students on a daily basis. So we are here again to witness the passing of a school budget. It is a good budget. It meets ministry requirements. It has been challenged by partner groups. It has been well presented. It will check off the boxes necessary, except for the most important one. It won't meet the educational needs of the whole system. This is what is most unfortunate. So it's no surprise, MATA does not support the budget as presented in this board package. MATA continues to urge all partner groups to lobby the government to provide funding that delivers its promises and that delivers for students. A learning environment that is well-funded and supported is a learning environment that is good for students, good for teachers, good for parents, and good for society as a whole. Thank you. Merci. Haisapwa.
Thanks, Matt, very much. Very heartfelt. CUPE President, Mr. Rycroft.
Good evening, Chair, trustees, district staff, parents, community members. On behalf of CUPE, I'd like to thank Matt Woods for his dedication, service as president of the Mount Arrowsmith Teachers Association. Your leadership, commitment, and collaboration have been greatly appreciated. We value the positive working relationship we have shared and the support you have shown on all the staff within the school community. Thank you for your time that you have devoted to advocating for education and supporting those who work alongside you. With your contributions, they've made a meaningful impact, and we wish you continued success in the future. I agree that the funding model is flawed, especially with the decreasing enrollment. But I'm speaking tonight on behalf of CUPE support staff, workers, families who depend on a strong public education system in School District 69. We recognize that the district is facing a projected shortfall of $1,355,000, driven largely by declining enrollment. But we cannot accept a budget response that balances the books, cutting the very people students rely on every day. Support staff or educational assistants, custodians, clerical, library clerks, Indigenous education advocates, school meals workers, responsible adults, and many others that keep the school running every single day. Our work supports learning, inclusion, safety, and student well-being in countless visible and invisible ways, and it is indispensable to the stability of a successful public education system. The proposed reductions of 4.1 classroom teachers, 3 non-enrolling teachers, 0.8 counseling, and 105 hours per week of educational assistants and child youth care workers are not minor adjustments. When these positions are cut, students lose direct support, schools lose stability, classrooms become harder to manage, and vulnerable children are left with fewer resources. As a union voice, we are asking the board to reconsider where these reductions are being made and to look first at alternatives that protect the frontline services. If support staff were brought into these conversations earlier, we could help identify practical solutions, clarify which services are essential, and flag where workloads are already stretched beyond capacity. The truth is simple. Support staff know this work intimately because we are the people doing this work every single day. To be excluded from decisions that directly affect our work to coworkers and our schools is not only discouraging, it undermines the collaboration this district says it values. First, we ask you reconsider the $160,000 set aside for exempt staff increases when provincial funding for those increases is still uncertain. At a time when support staff classrooms-based positions are being eliminated, increasing administrative compensation sends the wrong message to workers and the public. Second, reject the move to add any trustee benefits while special education counseling and classroom supports are being cut. Expanding compensation for the elected officials while reducing services to students is not consistent with the district's responsibility to protect learning conditions. Third, redirect the $20,000 still allocated for the communications plan in a year of real financial pressure. Those dollars belong in classrooms and student services, not communication spending. Fourth, account transparency for approximately $200,000 in annual savings from the unfilled absences. If the district is constantly underspending in this area, those funds should be used to preserve permanent frontline positions instead of justifying further cuts. Finally, we urge the board to explore every available avenue in specialty programs and international education before losing directly on local classrooms and student supports. We are tired of being asked to do more with less, year after year. Tired of watching vacancies remain unfilled while workloads continue to grow, and tired of being overlooked in conversations about the future of our schools, despite being the people who keep those schools functioning every day. And while we're tired, we're still showing up. We care for the students, supporting families, and holding the schools together because we believe deeply in public education. This is not just a budget discussion. It is a decision about values, about whether to protect administration and discretionary spending, or whether we protect the people who work directly with the students every day. We ask tonight for transparency, meaningful collaboration, and respect. Include us in these conversations before decisions are finalized. Listen to the workers who know the systems best. Revise this budget, reject cuts to frontline workers, and demonstrate clearly that this board values the students, the educators, and the support staff over administrative priorities. Support staff are not an extra cost to be managed. We are part of the foundation that makes this public education system possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ewan. And now Deepak, Marina, I can't find it on my page.
Here.
Okay, over to you.
Great. Good evening. We are so grateful for the opportunity to speak tonight. And trustees, we understand the position you are in. The funding pressures are real, and we know these decisions are not made lightly. But tonight, as you review this budget, we ask you to keep 3 people in mind. The first is a 14-year-old girl living with anorexia and anxiety. Most mornings, getting to school is a struggle. What gets her there is knowing she will see her school counselor once a week. That appointment is not a luxury. For her, it is a lifeline. So when we talk about reducing counselor positions, we need to be clear about what is actually being cut. The second is an elementary school teacher supporting a classroom with diverse learning needs, several students with significant behavioral challenges, and no dedicated EA support. She shows up every day and does remarkable work, but she leaves exhausted in ways that are not sustainable. And when educators are stretched beyond capacity, every student in that classroom feels it. The third is a young child with autism whose government funding was removed under the new provincial model. Private assessments are financially out of reach. Public wait lists are years long. In the meantime, he is attending school without the supports he needs, falling behind in speech, learning, and social connection. His parents are scared. The system has created a gap, and this child is falling through it. We are not suggesting you can solve the broader provincial funding crisis, but we are asking that within the control you do have, you protect the supports that matter most to vulnerable students. Counselors, child and youth care workers, education assistants, and inclusive education services. We ask you to hold these 2 children and the teacher and the many others like them across our district in mind as you vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. Okay, we'll move on to our general business items, information items, and I'll start with our superintendent's report and call on Dr. Peter Jory.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, bonjour, Squale CMCAA. May is coming to a close, and next week it will be June. We're all looking forward to all the end-of-year activities around the school district, including the final field trips, outdoor events, and of course, graduation ceremonies. I do tend to check the weather forecast, as you know, and it looks like we will see just 1 day in the mid-20s for temperature next week. Then a month of cooler weather in the teens will follow, which will help keep classroom temperatures down and will discourage unsanctioned student field trips to the beach. And it's generally good for learning in my estimation. It is especially nice for graduation ceremonies too, as none of our gyms are air conditioned, as you know. Updated school codes of conduct are due to the board office June 5th, with the consultation forms already received from all schools. All schools are expected to use a district template, which provides the necessary language to meet provincial legislation and asks for an expectation matrix that speaks to the desired school culture in aspirational, student-friendly language. This template is the work of our Code of Conduct Working Group, going back to 3 years ago now, which was formed by request of the Board of Education to modernize and align these documents across the district and make them generally more visible, useful, and understandable for students. And I believe that has all happened as a result. I very much enjoyed our school plan presentations last week. We followed a familiar format to the last 3 years, dividing PVP and the board into 2 rooms over at Winchelsea Learning Center. In each room, teams presented one school goal in a 5-minute mini ignite, followed by 2 minutes for warms and wonders with the board. The structure gave each board member a clear look at one goal from every school, why it was chosen, how it was being addressed, what impact it had, and the next steps. I was pleased to hear about the continued evolution of the process and the learning conversations taking place across the school district in support of the district strategic plan. Updated plans are due to the board office by June 12th. New school and district websites. And as I wrote this morning, I was hopeful that it would be today, and they are live as we speak. Every time I was refreshing our current site, I was bracing for that change, and now it is upon us. Training for principals and clerical occurred 2 weeks ago, which has given time for last-minute updates and some technical debugging before going live. If you search it now, you may get it. If you you also may get something else. However, they are up and running, and over the next week, a number of other technical issues will be solved, and these sites will be updated and continue to be functional going forward as of today. I was pleased to organize the recent Springwood Elementary Walk Party on Friday on behalf of the Joint Traffic Safety Committee. Thank you to the dozen or so volunteers who joined us to travel around 3 walking loops, taking in data through an electronic form and noting potential trouble spots. Much of this area around Springwood is absolutely ideal for foot and bike travel, which presents a great opportunity to reduce traffic congestion and increase student safety around the school, as well as potentially providing some healthy movement for our kids. The biggest concerns shown in the survey data and then reinforced through our process on Friday are the Alberni and Molliette crossings on Despard, which will generate a number of responses from us. First, there seems to be some underutilized routes which can divert students away from those locations, which we can certainly share and encourage. Second, we can further communicate habits amongst the travelers on that route that maximize safety and efficiency. And third, we think there are some practical and affordable infrastructure changes that can make a difference to these and other routes and encourage families to use them for foot and bike travel, which we can share with the town council and in some cases actually complete ourselves. More to follow on Springwood, and we look forward to engaging in a similar process for Oceanside very soon. Finally, unless you've been living in a cave or just joined the call 5 seconds ago, you know well it is budget season again, and you know there is work to do. Again, this is the case across the province and globally as well. There has been inflation, increases in benefit costs, increases in replacement costs, and the monies that were borrowed to get us through COVID have run out and governments need to pay them back. Everyone is dealing with the same issues. Our district had some firm responses last year to get back into position. And again, I am grateful that we did that work when we did. We are still in down enrollment and will need to have further reductions to balance our books per the provincial mandate to do so. And by the way, this is not a rebuttal to the previous comments at all. These are independent thoughts that were generated earlier today. Now, I know I sound like a bit of a broken record, but this is a school district that has traditionally staffed schools very well. For more than a decade, this board has emphasized spending on the ground in the classrooms and over again has been very quick to say yes to those expenses and very slow to say yes to other types of expenses. That is what they value, and that has not changed. I can tell you from experience that any non-classroom expense takes some serious convincing, and that's not a bad thing. Classroom learning has been protected, and those other ideas better be pretty good. For example, a few years ago, we spent $150,000 on busing software, and that cost was not well received. However, in addition to shorter ride times and the security provided by student swipe cards, the efficiencies gained will repay that cost in only 3 years. And the information it provides us will allow us to create further efficiencies that should come back in the form of budget relief next year. However, as much as I like this example, because of the obvious benefits, there are countless other opportunities that did not make it over the finish line. As I've said over and over, when we had extra money, we spent it, and it went out there into schools primarily. That means that when times are tougher, that is primarily where the belt must be tightened. That being said, we are always on the hunt for other cost recoveries. In addition to more efficient bus system, we have had a staff attendance program in place that seems to be making some small gains as of late. We are increasingly careful about tracking the hidden cost of long-standing activities and modifying them when possible. Phil's team has been working with the heating software to create efficiencies in our HVAC systems. And with a little help from our recent island climate, those savings are now into six figures. Staff expects that the sales of our closed sites will create more efficiencies. Hopefully, site sales will also allow the creation of a board legacy fund to help fund further capital costs in schools that we are actually still using for our students' education. This is all part of it, and with a little good fortune, we may be able to put something back into the budget next year. I do want to speak in favor of exempt staff at this time, partially in response to some of the comments I've been hearing out there, and partially because they don't come to this meeting and speak on their own behalf. Even without the media reporting, I am aware that we did not propose any exempt reductions this year. We did 3 last year, but none presented themselves in a reasonable way to meet this budget cycle. I will remind folks that all of these staff have personal services contracts, which require some form of severance when we terminate them. So we much prefer to make reductions through attrition whenever we can. Principals and vice principals must be placed in teaching roles and they have a 4-year drawdown on their additional salary. For example, that means no savings in year 1, then only small savings in each of the next 3 years. More than that, though, no matter where the exempt staff work across the system, we are talking about people who are very good at their jobs, who all do very specific and critical things in our school district, and they all do it at a very high level. When it comes time to take on more work, more education, and more responsibility, they put up their hands, and I don't take that lightly. Some of them even resigned their jobs and sold their homes to move here and work with us. Those of you on this call who know me know I'm not prone to overusing platitudes, and I will say this to all of you now. I have worked in 6 school districts, and this group, end to end, is the best I have worked with. That being said, we will continue to look at and recommend options for consolidation of positions, but we will try our best to do so in a way that will not upend the operation of our schools or unnecessarily displace our unionized workforce. As I said last month, reductions are not fun, and we sympathize with everyone who will experience anxiety, upheaval, and especially job loss. We do believe that within a relatively short period of time, all of our displaced staff will find a position again. But we know in the meantime, this experience is not enjoyable for most. That layoff line is high again this year, but because of the hard work last year, the reductions are mostly reflective of enrollment decline. Again, I have great faith in our personnel, our leadership, our emerging structures, and I believe that great practice will win the day and progress will continue. My colleagues will provide some educational updates. Again, thank you to all of you for doing what you do, whether you paint the walls, Zamboni the floors, copy the keys, reset the breakers, or teach, coach, mentor, lead, and support the students in this school district. Your efforts are noticed and appreciated. Thank you. Merci. Besepqua.
Trustee Young.
Yeah, I just have one question because this came to me in one of the many emails we've gotten, which I read. Somebody was questioning, a parent was questioning parental input into the codes of conduct. And I thought that that was part of the process in every school. Can you confirm that, please, Dr. Jory?
Well, I can't confirm that every part of every facet of the consultation occurred in every school. That's an expectation, of course, and all of our principals are well aware of that. Their typical practice would be to take that code of conduct to their PAC meetings, to meet with some form of student group, and to take it to staff or staff committee. So those 3 avenues for feedback on the code of conduct would be would, if there were any changes that came of those conversations, those suggestions would show up on that consultation form, the one that we've already received from all of our schools, and then those changes would land on the final version. So if there's a parent that is interested or concerned about codes of conduct, then working through their pack, I think, would be the most appropriate avenue. And if they have questions, they're encouraged to reach out to their principal.
Thank you, Trustee Young, for the question. Educational programs update, and I turn to Associate Superintendent Ms. Wilson and Director of Instruction, Mr. Terpstra, and I don't know who's going to go first tonight, but over to you two.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I won't.
Not fighting.
Thanks, everyone. And just a few highlights today, as you'll hear most of what I've taught, what's gone on in the Ed Committee report. First of all, though, capstone projects by our graduating students happened in the last week at both of our high schools, all of our high schools. And I'm really super proud because when the ministry proposed capstone projects and the career education program changes, what our schools pulled off was what was envisioned. It was a beautiful fair of students showing their learning chosen by them and around what they were passionate about. I was able to attend, have great conversations with students about a variety of topics. A few of them are willing to present their capstones at the Ed Committee on June 9th, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. Related to East Augustine's talk, we had an anti-racism cultural safety working group in the district, and we've talked about that at Ed Committee as well. And that group, which represents staff from across the district, was spent time learning with Dustin Louie and really train the trainer type of learning that we had. And thanks to Principal Katie Marin, who I think is on the call, for organizing that and connecting us with Dr. Dustin Louie. Representing the French Advisory Committee, we had our third and final meeting of the year. And besides lots of great work and thanks to the people that participate in that committee, just wanted to highlight the French immersion visioning and student feedback process that happened at Oceanside Elementary School. And again, that will be presented at Ed Committee. June, as we know, is focused on Indigenous History Month and Pride Month. And I can assure people across the district at all of our schools in different ways, those two events will be focused on, celebrated, and a focus of learning in classrooms through the month of June. Really, all schools are working towards celebrating a year of learning and growth, which culminates, of course, at the end of June by grad ceremonies, but also by summary of learning and learning that will go home to every student. And we look forward to that. I'll just end with come to the Ed Committee June 9th for more details on all that's been shared. Thank you.
Advertising, good on the advertising. Ms. Wilson.
I just have one quick share. I just want to acknowledge all the work that our early learning team has done with Denise Fansadal and Shayla Morrison for their pre-K transition program that's finishing up. It's unique to our district, I believe. It's still something that not many districts do. A survey will be going out to parents to ask the feedback on how it impacted their child. But first, initial comments that we're hearing is it's amazing, it's wonderful, it really reduces the anxiety of our children. They know what's happening and lots of fun. I'm not sure who has more fun, whether it's the principals that are enjoying having the 4-year-olds coming to school and that new energy that the 4-year-olds bring. I was at one school today and out at lunchtime, and the principal was there playing soccer. So I'm not sure who has more fun, the littles or the bigs.
Thanks. to both of you, Ms. Wilson and Mr. Terpstra. Okay, over to Trustee Young, facilitator to the Education Committee of the Whole. And you have a couple of recommendations to come forward this evening.
Yes, I do. But before I do that, I want to thank Mr. Terpstra, because we usually get together the morning after the board meeting to figure out our agenda. But I think he's just given me the agenda for the next Ed Committee meeting. So thank you, Mr. Terpstra. I look forward to seeing that agenda and finalizing it with you. Yeah, we have a few things going on. I'll just do a quick highlight of our page 1819. We looked at the Qualicum Beach Elementary, and this was really interesting because it really counts on observation. So what educators had done was they'd observed the children and then created a situation that supported those children. And I think it's a really good example. So I'm going to let people view the PowerPoint on that. Ms. Augustine referred to the Indigenous Education Council and the work of the Indigenous Education Department as it was told to me and as I remember it. I had an opportunity this weekend to take a look at that last weekend, to take a look at the resources there. They're fabulous. They're there for our educators. There's stuff as a person who was a historian and really thought I knew about Indigenous Canadian history and background. There was stuff that I didn't know there. And so please make use of that. All of those videos are really good. And it's a resource for our teachers, and it's in our staff portal. So right now it's to be used by teachers only. Teachers and, well, other staff too, probably. We talked about the technology plan and then the board authorized course, Explorations in the Care Economy, which takes me back to the years of before any of you remember, where we actually had funding for career prep programs in the early 90s. And it was a good time in education for all of us. My caseload as a counselor in those days was 225 students. And we will never get back to those days, I don't think, but more on that later. So I do have a couple of recommendations. This is unusual for the Ed Committee, but I would like to move that the Board of Education of School District 69 approve the 2026-2027 school fees as presented, and they are in your package on page 20 and 21. So what I think we have tried to do is keep them fairly much the same throughout all of the schools and to keep them as low as possible through the power of co-buying. So usually what happens, especially in the K-7, is the school supplies are all bulk ordered, and that way we save money and save families going to Staples and getting told that they need all this stuff that they don't need. Enough out of me, and I'll move it back to you.
Thank you, Trustee Young. I need a seconder, please, for the motion on school fees. Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Is there any questions, Trustee Austin?
Just again, I say this at every opportunity that I have, and I will reiterate it tonight at this public board meeting. When you look at the school fees, particularly when you look at something like the ROAMS program, that can seem quite startling at $3,000. But we do have policy, and finances are and should never be a barrier for a student to participate in some of these programs. So if you are a student or the parent of a student that would like to take part in something like Global ROAMS or some of our other programs that might have a fairly hefty fee attached to it, please talk to the teacher involved. Please talk to your school administrator, because we have mechanisms so that every student can take part, and if they choose, but if finances are creating a challenge for them. So I just like to put that out there every time.
Thank you, trustee Austin. Seeing no further hands, trustees, all in favor? Thank you very much, trustee Kurland. That's carried. Board authority authorized course care economy career sampler 11, which is in your package 22 to 31, and over to you again for that mouthful, trustee Young.
Okay, I'll try. I will move that the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum approve the board authority authorized course known as BA. Care Economy Career Sampler 11. And that's on page, that's quite a few pages. So it goes on for quite a while, but you'll see it all in the package there.
Thank you, trustee Young. Seconder, please, trustees, to the motion. Thank you, trustee Austin. Are there any questions? Elaine, comment or question?
Yeah, a little bit of a comment, because as I'm going through this, I think it's really good. I love BA courses. I taught BA courses. I love them. But just for parents and people who want the short piece, on page 24, it has all the big ideas. And later on, it breaks down the big ideas. But that gives you a sense of what it's all about. Career life development includes in cycles of exploring, planning, reflecting, etc. Well-being, self-care support, awareness of diverse worldviews, desire to help and serve others as a value, and focused exploration and real life connection with different things. So that gives you a sense of where it's at, and I love it. So thank you.
Thank you, trustee Young. Are there any other comments, trustees? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Carried. Okay, the fins and ops. Big agenda for you, trustee Kellogg, in the last meeting, and a number of items coming forward. So I'll turn it over to you for the committee of the whole report, fins and ops.
Thank you, Chair Flynn. So we've got the 2026-2027 annual facility grant spending. Secretary Treasurer Ron Amos, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we do our recommendation?
Not really. Just to, again, we talked about it at Fin and Ops, but just for procedurally, I mean, we reviewed it at Fin and Ops. It's a range of projects dealing with extending the life of facilities. And again, that's the caveat to these funds, is that it's not meant to add classroom space. It's not meant to add additional space. It really is preserving the life of the facilities we've got. Director Monroe, I think, spoke to it quite well, received some questions that he was able to answer. Today, it's really just about receiving and supporting the submission to be sent to the ministry.
Great. Thank you very much. So the recommendation that the Board of Education of School District 69 receive and support the 2026-2027 annual facilities grant spending plan as presented.
Moved by trustee Kellogg, seconded by trustee Young. Any questions, trustees? Just for a note, over time, this funding level has not really increased a lot over 10 or 15 years. We do not see a lot of new money coming into the annual facilities grants. So it definitely pinches things. Trustee Young?
Yeah, and to add to that, that's this has been a big piece of the advocacy that all of our groups have been doing, is to try and get this this fund increased at least to the amount of inflation. So it's not without screaming and yelling, but the screaming and yelling seems to have fallen on deaf ears. BC ASBO, Mr. Amos's group, did a fabulous report on that they presented to the budget to the government on this kind of stuff. So,
Mr. Amos.
In fairness, they actually increased the amount, and again, it's nominal, but they did increase it. The ministry folks did advocate on our behalf to Treasury Board. They increased it. Our contribution 2 years ago or addition was about 80 grand. This year we had a net increase locally of about 40,000. So again, I don't know if it's considering they've got like 15 years to catch up. There has been modest growth in the last 2 years.
Thank you for that. I hadn't kept track of that. Trustees, any further questions on the motion on this receipt of and support of the annual facility grant spending plan? Seeing no further hands, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. And back to you, Trustee Kellogg, the climate change accountability report.
Right. The recommendation that the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum receive the 2025 Climate Change Accountability Report as presented.
Moved by Trustee Kellogg, seconded by. Thank you, Trustee Young. Mr. Amos, do you wish to comment any further, draw people's attention?
Why not? So annual filing, so climate change accountability report, been in existence about 10 years now, again, based on the provincial mandate of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by all parties, by those that they can impact. So this is an annual filing by all public sector organizations, PSOs, per the Climate Change Accountability Act, and you'll see that in the report itself. It's for a period of January to December. So again, sometimes the gains that we speak to at Finance and Ops won't manifest themselves because we're seeing a part year being represented in some of these reports. The gains might be in the spring of a school year, but again, not showing up on the report until the following year, knowing it's a January to December report. Again, it's meant to report all greenhouse gas emissions, and then thereby the resulting offsets that basically dictate the cost of our board, or gain that we've got to submit to the ministry. And again, this was reviewed at the Finance and Ops with some, you'll see some narrative within the notes themselves, or if you're happening to be viewing it online, you can see the discussion at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. Any questions, trustees? It's been moved by Trustee Kellogg, seconded by Trustee Young. Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Carried. 2026-2027 annual budget bylaw. Trustee Kellogg.
Yeah, just before I read this recommendation, the trustees received 20 plus emails from parents and community members, and we want to thank those that sent us in emails and putting out their reach for what they would like to see with the budget. And yeah, we just wanted to say thank you very much for doing that. Carrying on, the recommendation that the Board of Education of School District 69 give all 3 readings to approve the annual budget bylaw for the 2026-2027 fiscal year at its regular board meeting of May 26, 2026, and the motion must be carried unanimously.
Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Mr. Amos, do you have comments that you would like to add to the budget presentation in your papers that you have submitted 39 to 59 in our budget package?
Absolutely. Yes, so good opportunity to introduce, first of all, the documents that are before the board. Clearly, the first item is the briefing note. I'll speak to that shortly, but the briefing note has a couple of tables that I'll draw attention to, including a revisionary schedule that's also attached in terms of what was presented at last week's special budget board meeting. And then finally, there's some tables that I've generally always presented either with the budget. It's in the same format that we share for our finance, our quarterly reporting at the Finance and Ops. It's the same format that we share prior to our financial statements, and clearly it's a summary preceding the budget. And then finally, the budget, you'll find the documents on whatever pages are there now. Okay, the following pages. It's about
45
25
onward.
yeah, 25 pages worth of budgetary documents that I'll speak to shortly. So the briefing notes is really just introducing the budget itself. It speaks to the process that the board and senior leaders, that we basically engaged in it with our educational partners. It speaks to the legislative requirement of passing a budget by June 30th. It speaks to some of the highlights in terms of what you heard in my, again, last week's presentation was all about anticipating the grants based on enrollment. And again, you've heard that the enrollments are projected to be down 100 students. That is what the basis of the grant is. Okay, and it also takes into account, or it doesn't take into account, of course, any grants that haven't been yet announced. Sometimes we know about something forthcoming, the labor settlement funding, for example, for teachers, because we don't know the value of it, we can't include it in the budget. It takes into account some expenditures that we've talked about, rate changes that we know about for benefit rate increases, anticipated expenses, should the board elect to increase commensurate with the provincially bargained increase, exempt staff increases, should that be entertained by the board. It includes, as I spoke to, a modification to the original projected deficit or the gap, as I call it, the shortfall. So originally we were anticipating 3 priority items, CTT, collaborative teaching team, for 150, the mentorship of 30, and the communication plan of 20. And so with the information, as you noted in the bottom or the last paragraph of the briefing note, that after hearing back from trustees, parents, and staff, senior administration have removed the proposed CTT and mentorship initiative and instead put the funds back into non-enrolling staff to be determined with further discussion. And so that's why you're seeing 2 line items reflecting the original budget and then a revised budget allocation. And then from that, obviously, the recommendations that are being put forward that we've heard about from certainly the partner groups that have spoken before me, as well as some of the trustee comments that we've heard. It has been a difficult budget. There's no denying that. We are down in enrollment. We know that. We've heard that. Certainly other educational partners recognize the pressures that the board has in terms of meeting the budget obligations of passing a balanced budget and the immediacy of doing this by the end of the year. We know that there's a time sensitive in that regard. We've got time, but clearly it's a difficult budget. I get that. Last year was a much deeper reductions to staffing. Last year, as Superintendent Jory indicated, last year we actually reduced in a multitude of support staffs as well as teaching staffs. We reflected on custodial changes. We reflected on clerical and library changes. We dealt with a trades position, for example. And we dealt with educational assistants hours and teachers last year also. There's no wins, if you want. We get that. It really is about the process of understanding that it is a process that we have to maintain. So from those recommended or revised changes is how the budget has been calculated, as it were, or shown here. And so those changes are reflective in the tables that are in that schedule and in the financial summary as indicated. So again, I won't necessarily need to walk you down unless that's the ask, but you can walk down the comments to see how these changes are reflective in the different categories that the budget is crafted around, the different formatting. Pressures from inside again, pressures from inside as well as the global economy impacting, for example, our international school program. We talked about that at the special board meeting in terms of its impact on the budget. We've talked about the benefit increases that are beyond our control to the most extent. That's calculated within the budget, as well as any other kind of found funding, new funding streams that are being identified through new programming, or additional programs that we're offering, for example, in the childcare. The budget documents itself, and again, I'm not going to walk you through a lot of it, but do recognize that the bylaw itself is the summation of the three funding sources, the fund sources. So the operating fund, so again, just flipping my own pages here so that I got the right stuff in front of me. So for example, the operating fund is dealt with in Schedule 2. And so the revenues being produced from the operating fund is the value, assuming we're balancing our budget, is the value we have to spend. So that number gets rolled into the bylaw as its first value. And they get rolled forward into statement 2. Likewise, the special purpose funds, the revenues we receive are indicative of the expenditures we're going to take on. Those numbers from the second series, the Schedule 3s, it gets moved forward into statement 2. And then likewise, the final piece of that bylaw amount is the information that's coming from Schedule 4, which is in this case amortization of our capital. And so that's just a value that is an accounting entry that shows up finally on statement 2. And why I'm drawing our attention to the statement 2 as a rolling up of the various funding and thereby implied expenditures is this is the value of our budget. This is the value of the money that we have, that the board has to work with in its planning processes to deliver a service starting July the 1st. And so that's the value that gets presented in the bylaw that the board is now deliberating on. The actual activity of the budget and how those funds are spent are kind of the discussion at this table in terms of the input from parents, the input from staff, the input from the board members themselves. The nuances of how we spend that funding is the discussion for today. So hopefully that provides a little bit of a clarity of the basis of the budget. But like I said, it's those values on that statement that actually embed themselves in the bylaw language that you're reading tonight. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. I have questions and hands from Trustee Austin, and I'll go to Trustee Young. Trustee Austin.
Okay, thank you. I think I will just read from my notes this evening. I'd like to acknowledge the work of our Secretary, Treasurer, and Senior Administration in putting this budget process together. I'd like to extend sincere thanks to all our partner groups who dedicated so much time and provided thoughtful, well-reasoned feedback throughout the process. And I'd also like to thank the many individuals who took the time to reach out to trustees with your concerns. We've all come to the common understanding that this is a very difficult year and that challenging decisions must be made. We recognize that declining enrollment is having a direct impact on the school district's financial position. That said, I am struggling with the proposed draft budget before us this evening. It has become something of a mantra in our district that students are at the center of all our decisions. It is therefore extremely disheartening to see proposed cuts coming at the expense of those who work most closely with students in our classrooms. I do not understand why, with declining enrollment, we cannot find savings in other areas of the budget. With nearly 100 fewer students, there should also be reductions in expenses such as supplies, technology, and other operational costs. Individually, they may seem like small savings, but collectively, they could become significant. I also do not understand why, despite a declining student population, this draft budget proposes decreases in regular instruction, counseling, and inclusive education, while educational administration, business administration, operations, and maintenance continues to rise. I also question why utilities are budgeted at the same level when we're no longer servicing previously leased sites within the district. Though there are global forces that affect our small district, such as rising fuel costs, it would help to see just where in the budget we are seeing these changes reflected. Throughout this budget process, I have asked a few times whether it would be possible to see alternative budget scenarios, including options that would allow us to understand how small reductions in different areas could impact the overall budget. Other than some scenarios mentioned by Peter earlier, and thanks for those savings found through those efficiencies, I do not see evidence that we have thoroughly examined all areas of spending to identify savings that would not immediately affect our students in the classroom. I appreciate the withdrawal of the proposed funding for the collaborative teaching team and mentorship programs, and hope we can reintroduce these worthwhile plans in future years. However, that still leaves $1.3 million shortfall. With declining enrollment, we may not be able to protect all the positions that are closest to our students, but perhaps with a finer lens at other areas, we could protect most. For these reasons, I will not be voting in favor of passing the budget this evening. I would also like to leave the following question for our senior admin. Could the Board of Trustees and the public see attempts to reduce in areas that mitigate cuts to those working closest to the students, looking at all areas? Thank you.
Trustee Young.
Thanks, Trustee Austin. I think I concur with much of what you said. When I think about this process, and believe me, I've done a lot of thinking about this and gone through many, many meetings and many long walks. I always think about the same things. I think, okay, have we done the proper process? And have we heard from everybody on the budget? Have we heard from our partners on the budget? And this year, for the first time, I've felt, and I don't think this is true. I think if you looked at it logically, we've had the same number of meetings. We've had the survey open. We've had lots of discussion. But for some reason, I'm not feeling finished. I'm not feeling that all the questions have been answered. So that's process. And that's my number one concern always. Are we serving students? Are we truly serving the students? Are we being a good employer? We have to be ethical. We have to be a good employer. And on the other side, I know that there are people out there with layoff notices, and I know what it felt like to have those layoff notices sitting before you and not knowing whether you were going to find work or not. And so on the other side, I want to stabilize the system. So that means, I want to vote for, I want to vote against, I don't know what I want to do. So I sat down on Saturday, went over the budget, and wrote down a whole bunch of questions, which I then emailed to senior management. And I hope you have some answers to these tonight. So I can ask them now, or I can ask them when we do first reading. I think it's very clear we're not going to get unanimous support tonight anyway, so it really doesn't matter. I could ask some of them now, some of them later. It's up to the chair.
If you like to ask your questions, you ask them now.
Okay. There are 9 of them, I think. Okay, so typically our board has supported student services beyond the provincially mandated ratios. And I think Dr. Jory alluded to this. Are we doing this in the proposed budget? And if so, by how much? Oh, I hear silence.
Dr. Jory, yeah, no, we're certainly not going to the new provincial averages, that's for sure.
Yeah.
In contract. Dr.
Yeah,
Jory.
I'll give you a bit of context, and I've spoken to this in general terms. And then hopefully Ron, Amos, you can put your chart up there on the screen. We've been working on this a little bit behind the scenes. And yeah, the question is, we receive a certain amount of funding into student services or into our general budget, which we directly allocate into student services. It's generated by students with unique needs. And the question is, do we spend all of that money on students with unique needs and supporting them? And the answer is yes. Do we spend additional money out of core to also to supplement this fund? And the answer is yes. And so when I spoke to this being a place where we have traditionally placed our spending, you can see this chart that Secretary Treasurer Amos has produced. And over the last several years, there's been some fluctuations, but generally it has been well above. If you look at 2019-20, 39% above. So an additional 39% was added from core on top of those generated funds. Then an additional 27%, big jump in 21-22 to 43%. This is in that post-COVID area where we had a little bit of an influx of cash in the system. We were also going through up enrollment at the time. 22-23, 37, 23-24, 38, 24-25, 34. And then, of course, last year, as mentioned, getting into some tough times and drawing down a little bit of that optional spending and only putting 18% in addition to the generated funds. That number there on the right was the proposed amount prior to the changes that Mr. Amos has suggested. And so we would see a slight uptick in that. I don't know what the actual percentage would be. I wouldn't want to guess, but it would be slightly higher than it is now, and that would mean it would be same or actually slightly above last year's allotment. So this might surprise people given the conversation so far, but we would be putting more relative to the generated funding, the student generated funding, relative to last year, slightly more.
Yeah, it looks like it could be about 2% more. Thank you for that. Also, typically in the past, what we've done is we've held back a bit of the EA funding to September to see if we've got new students who need support, because sometimes students come in who need support, they don't have support, the paperwork takes a bit longer, whatever. And I wonder if we are doing that this year, and again, if so, how much? Sounds like a
Ms. Wilson, I think you're best to understand the balancing.
Sounds like a Ms. Wilson question.
Balancing act here.
We did have a small amount held back to be able to do exactly what Trustee Younger talked about. But when we went to look at our positions that are going to go out this Friday, we were not within our letter of understanding that we have with our local around the number of positions that needed to be 25 hours or above. And so we added a few more hours in, and that's left us with a really small balance. We are planning that if we do have new children that do come into our community, that will increase the funding that we get, and it will be new monies that come in. It won't be the same as last year where we had to pay back our funding protection. And so that new money can go in if children are designated to be able to support what needs may need to be there for kiddos.
right. And funding protection is another one that I just
we don't want to go there.
I don't want to go there because
don't want to go there.
It's just a loan fund. It's just it's crazy.
On the issue, sorry to interject for a minute. On the issue of holdback, Associate Superintendent Wilson, do you want to comment on elementary teacher holdbacks that are sort of
Mhm.
held in abeyance as we find out where we need them?
Absolutely. And again, normally I would be feeling more comfortable that we've got some FTE sitting in the bank. We have very little FTE sitting in the bank right now to be able to adjust any school that might be at pressure. We currently have one elementary school that's doing their school configuration, and it's really tight. And so it might be that we have to release staffing into that school before school starts. It may be in August, but we're staffed really tight. And so we do have just over 2 FTE, which a school our size is not very much to be able to support any growth that we see that doesn't necessarily warrant or give us enough. As Superintendent Jory said, our Secretary Treasurer Amos said, students don't all arrive in the same grade at the same school. They're splattered around our district,
Yeah.
and that might put a school over capacity, and we need to add that staffing to be able to support. And so we have just over 2 FTE to be able to monitor that as we move into September.
Oh, thank you for that. That's reassuring. Okay. Let me just see. There's a couple of other things here. In terms of, now this is a hard question, and I don't know if you were able to answer this. Because I know to Associate Superintendent Wilson's last comment, it's little bits in all the schools. I know that I was told that there's one school that's down by 50 students. 50 students is approximately 2 full-time equivalents, approximately. And so is there any correlation between where our changes, where we're decreasing in staff and where the enrollment is decreasing? Can you kind of help me with that one? And I know that's a tough one.
Some of it might be easier than other parts of it. You're right. Our high school students have got a really large graduating class going out. And so we don't have as many grade 8s coming in next year. And so therefore there's not as many courses going to be selected by students. So there is less staffing for core teachers staffing in our high schools. We also have a couple of our elementary schools that have less divisions this next year. As you recall, we have a projected enrollment of 238 children coming into kindergarten. Our graduation class is almost 400. So there's a big difference there. We know we're going to get children coming and going. Our French immersion program is one less division down this next year, which is when we looked at it and when Director of Instruction Terpstra and I took a look to see whether it was the same ratio of students wanting French immersion as the cohort of kindergartens coming in. It's not that we're doing any less French immersion, it's just that we have less numbers of children choosing French immersion because there's less children coming into kindergarten next year. The ratio itself is the same. It's the same percentage of children going into French immersion, but it is one division down. So where we've got the FTE down for classroom teachers is where the children are not coming. They're not attending our system. The enrollment's gone down.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm having a problem with my math. When Ms. Heinrichs was here, she was saying that the counseling at Ecole Bolinas was down by 0.5 and total counseling is down by 0.8. And I'm like, that seems like an awful lot for Ecole Bolinas. So where's this reduction in counseling coming from? And is counseling like partially supported by school funds and partially district, or like there's something I'm not understanding there? That might be a Dr. Jory, I don't know.
I can jump in if you like.
Okay.
The way we work with our staffing for counseling is that all counseling staff are what we consider district staffing.
Okay.
That's evolved over years. At Bolinas Secondary School, and I think this is what the presentation may have been referring to, is that it is school-based staffing at Bolinas. We give district staffing to Bolinas to spend it directly on counseling. They're not district positions at Bolinas. Every other counselor in our community are district positions. It's just because of the timing of when those particular positions were hired, we didn't do district staffing at that time for counselors. You're correct. We have reduced and adjusted our counseling this year. We have reduced it over the last few years, again, reflecting enrollment. The ratio that I think you're asking for, Trustee Young, is are we still over what the ratios are given, knowing that there's new language coming out next year, and within the next 3 years is new language coming for ratio students for what counseling ratio needs to be. We're still over 10% higher than what the ratio is. It's not that we're at the number. And if we had the new ratio that the BCTF and the collective agreement is today, we would be on ratio. So we're not under, we're not as high as we have been in the past, but we do have less. We also have other positions that support students
That's
around
true.
social emotional learning.
Yeah.
So we have other positions that support that. Are there needs? Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, Dr. Jory would like to chime in, and then
Yeah,
you
I
can go back
would.
to your.
Thanks. I think Ms. Wilson's soft selling it a little bit, and I recognize that there's a universal interest in counseling. I think there's a recognition of the need, especially these days. I mean, we live in a very complex society, and mental health is at the forefront of all of our conversations around our students. But when I talk about those historical ratios, us putting the staffing out there, we have typically been, including this year, over 50% higher
Yes.
than the contractual obligation. Literally 53% higher than the contractual obligation. That's how much value we've put into that. The reductions, I believe, are going to take us to 38% above contractual obligation. And as that new contract language, and they have settled and agreed to some increases, which we would obviously support, those new standards, we will meet or exceed those new standards if we stay at the same level that we are at right now, or intending to go to, I would say. So yes, there's a reduction, but we are still, we think, demonstrating our commitment to the need.
Ms. Wilson?
I just want to affirm, I got my numbers mixed up between the learning support ratio and the counseling ratio. The learning support ratio is over 10% plus our SLPs. So the counseling is over 30%.
Right. Well, I'm an ex-counselor,
when
so
we
I
say-
support
and what-
counseling.
And when we say over, it means that we are providing services to not the ratios, but beyond the ratios, to say, more, the caseload is not as great as what the provincial ratios will dictate in the next 3 to 4 years.
Well, and I think the other thing that people need to know, and this speaks a bit to exempt staff, is that we work on very narrow margins here. BCPC has a grid that they provide for our exempt staff. I think people would be somewhat surprised about what makes up our exempt staff. And I would say that this year, exempt staff increases were less than teachers and less than the other public sector unions that have settled. Well, it's very easy to kind of say, oh, well, you should cut that exempt staff. Mr. Amos provided the trustees this morning with a list of who the exempt staff are. And, there's people on here like our social worker, our integrated child and youth clinical counselor. I certainly wouldn't want to have them underpaid or or the other part of it is then we tend to get people who are not registered. And I think that's really important. So I think when we look more deeply at our exempt staff, people would see that there's the right number to support the largest business in our area, and to be a good employer. So I don't know if Mr. Amos wants to share that chart publicly or whether it's just for trustees, but please don't just think that it's, the superintendent and a couple of other guys. It's way bigger than that. And I would argue, having watched our staff over many years now, watching our exempt staff, these guys are working really hard and they are doing things that push education ahead. So that's my little rant about that. I think Trustee Austin has spoken to breaking down district admin expenses. I think, trustee remuneration, people have said, oh, don't give yourself raises. We're not giving ourselves raises. We're not doing a benefits plan. That's off the table, has been forever, as far as I'm concerned. So are there things that we could look at that Trustee Austin may have taken a look at? I'm not so sure that they're going to save us a lot of money. I really would like to thank senior management for reconsidering the mentorship and the other $100,000 amount. I don't know that there's anything else that we can do to make this budget better. I would, however, like to ask, I heard a rumor last week that elementary arts and ASD, which we used to call exploratory funding, has been reduced. And I wonder if this is a school-based decision or if this is a district decision, because I do want to see music, arts programs and ASD programs at all of our elementary schools. So, and I think that's my last question. Thanks for answering.
Who wants to take I think there's school-based decisions.
Yes, that's
Teachers
my
have put
first
their hands-
response. And we haven't made any reductions to that category in some time. I recognize that years ago there was a larger amount supplementing our elementary schools staffing. That has become somewhat smaller. But it is the principal's decision on how they allocate that. And please fill in any of the finer strokes if I'm missing them, Ms. Wilson.
No, I'm pleased to say that in most of our elementary schools, music is still provided through prep and physical education. And in terms of ADSP, our elementary schools most of them are getting together and looking at how they can do some passion ADST with the staff that they have, similar to what used to be known as the exploratories. But it's not changed in staffing this year. It's what schools are doing and how they're organizing within their schools.
Okay, Mr. Amos, closing, and then we'll take the first vote on whether the motion to go through the 3 readings tonight is carried unanimously. Mr. Amos.
Unrelated but related. The board received an email prior to the board, this agenda, no, sorry, not the agenda, but just before 3 o'clock this afternoon, related to the budget itself, some questions on transportation. Would the chair want to hear A, the question, and B, the answer?
Sure, the question on transportation was very interesting. This was from community. If you've got the figures handy, I know transportation is not a requirement by districts to provide. That would be the first place we go, and we have always consciously, I think, as the board, tried to keep our busing fees down and not make it necessarily a straight across revenue expense flat line. But I'll let you share the better English than mine.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do want to at least acknowledge the question, and I'll read it for the public to put it on, obviously, the record itself. So the question came in regarding the transportation income and expenses. Could you please explain why the expenses are not covered by the fee income charged for use of the bus service? And then commentary. I note that transportation income is approximately 100,000, while transportation costs exceed 2 million. Could you also provide some background on previous discussions regarding busing fees? Has increasing those fees been considered as a way to help address the budget shortfall? So brief history. Generally speaking, transportation is at the will of the local boards. There are transportation dollars embedded in the operating funds that allow for it based on student composition, student disparity, I call it, how our students are spread out around our geographic boundaries, and therefore the implications of needs for transportation. So I think it's about 1.2 million. And again, don't quote me, but it's in around that nature. And so we've always indicated, as we've had these transportation conversations and the implementation of fees, is the fee structure isn't meant to address that shortfall. Fees, many of you are aware, were canceled for eligible riders in about 10 years ago, we'll call it. And so we used to charge eligible riders. We stopped doing it because there were some additional funds provided through a transportation fund, and it's about $400,000. So again, the transportation fees have never been as a means to address the shortfall. One district south of us, down in Saanich, are trying to tie that shortfall together in terms of the increase in fees. But clearly, when we speak of our transportation fees, it's generally meant to try to change behavior, try to get individuals to sign up early. And so from the eligible rider perspective. And so because of the complexities of having to redesign the routes, as early or as late as mid-September. So again, it was more behavioral than it was filling a gap or a shortfall. Courtesy riders, on the other hand, we don't necessarily have an obligation to provide transportation, but we have, and again, Superintendent Jory has spoken to this at length in terms of our ability to take on courtesy riders beyond what we would necessarily run a route for. And so we've been able to provide courtesy rider seats, but we've also always been able to allow for fees on that. So it's never meant, again, the takeaway is it's never meant to cover that gap. We talked about potentially making our routes more efficient as we go into the next budget cycle. That remains to be seen with the new board, as Superintendent Jory alluded to. So we've had that conversation at the Finance and Ops Committee of the whole, the implications of getting out in front of that early for the fall conversation, post-election conversation, post-board election. But again, it was really about the fact that, again, the fees aren't tied to the costs, but we are trying to find efficiencies, find better ways to deliver the service that speaks to the policy that the boards are asking us to abide by.
Thanks, Mr. Amos. Trustee Austin.
Thanks for answering that question, Ron. But I was just going to quickly comment and go back to a couple of Elaine's comments. And one was you say that you assume it's because of this, or you suspect that we do it this way. And so I think that's the point of my questioning this budget, is I don't want to base my decision on assumptions or suspicions. I would like to see evidence. I would like to see the evidence that we've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I would like to see some options. This is what happens if we reduce here then it affects it over here. And I haven't seen that. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Young. And then we may go to the vote on the first motion here.
Yeah, I found another question. And having liquidated a business, I think I know where this is going. In the past, we've used untargeted capital, retained earnings, I guess is another name to say it, to cover extra operating expenses. And I would like Mr. Amos to explain whether or not this is a good idea at this time. Or somebody else.
No,
I'm
Mr.
looking
Amos
around.
was
I'm
the
looking
first
around if
request.
anyone else wants to
Yeah,
take
I
a
don't think
stab.
anyone else is going to jump in.
I think this one's you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll
So
bear
blessed.
this. I'll bear this one or weather this one. So I think what you're asking, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, the use of surpluses versus local capital reserves. I'm looking at you trying to connect my eyes, but you can't see me any better than I can see you. But I think what you're speaking to is how in the past, let me frame this. I think what you're asking is how in the past we have used operating surpluses to balance the budget. So when we had some operating surpluses, unappropriated, and so about 5 years ago, we had about $2 million in operating surplus, of which some of that money gets appropriated, i.e. tagged for something. Sometimes it's a white fleet, sometimes it's software, sometimes a one-time ad hoc software. Sometimes it's district programming. Clearly any unspent school budgets get placed as appropriated surplus. Any unspent targeted funding from Indigenous, as identified earlier, Indigenous funding gets put into this committed surplus. What remains is what they call uncommitted or unappropriated surplus. So, like I said, about 5 years ago, we had about post-COVID, and part of that a large increase was post-COVID when we had additional federal fundings coming in. We had additional provincial funding to the tune of about 1.4 in new money. And if you remember the conversation around COVID, as kids were getting a different kind of service from us, we took it online. It created a buffer surplus that year because we didn't have replacements, because we were for 2 months, we were all doing what we're doing today behind laptops and video screens. So that generated this large buffer about 5 years ago. It was about 2 million. So over the course of the last 3 and 4 years, we've been drawing down that reserve. Some of it planned, most of it planned, some of it unplanned, as we had to buffer some of these additional costs through replacements going higher, some of these benefit costs going higher outside the budgeted domain. So we've been drawing down those reserves over the course of time. Without looking at the numbers, we're currently sitting at close to $600,000 to $700,000 in reserve. I've always spoken to the board in terms of, and this is embedded in policy, is the need to have some money back for contingency to the tune of 1 to 2%. So we are just barely hitting that 1%, which is why I would say, based on policy and based on my ability to sleep at night, I wouldn't I wouldn't suggest us going any deeper into that. So clearly in the past, we've used it to buffer these circumstances, but let's face it, as we've projected over the course of the next couple of years, this down enrollment will continue for the next few years. I am hopeful in our current year, in our current fiscal year, that we will have some positive some positive news, as it were. But again, I want to get out of the year based on the hard and fast decisions that we made last year. We may see some, like I said, positive news, and then we can decide in the fall if there's a need or wonder to even dip into those. But in the meantime, as far as balancing the current budget, I would not recommend us using any of those unappropriated reserves to balance the budget at this time. Give us a couple of years. If we can replenish, again, we can kind of change that format. But in the meantime, I wouldn't recommend it.
Thank you. Good answer.
Okay, so to keep moving, but this doesn't preclude any other questions that may arise as we go through the next steps. I'm going to call a question on whether or not the board would like to give all 3 readings to the annual budget at its regular board meeting of May 26, 2026. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Contrary? And Trustee Young, what is your abstaining?
I'm stepping. Yeah, I'm abstaining. I'm stepping aside.
Okay.
At this point, yeah.
Okay, so we will not do all 3 readings tonight, but I think to have us move this along, we could do our first 2 readings. So I turn it back to you, Trustee Kellogg, for first reading.
I have to turn my mic on. Okay, thank you very much. So the recommendation is that the Board of Education of School District 69, Qualicum, give first reading to adopt the School District number 69 Qualicum annual budget bylaw in the amount of $72,742,820 for the 2026-2027 fiscal year.
Thank you, Trustee Kellogg, seconded by Trustee Kurland. Any further questions at this time, trustees? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor of first reading? Contrary? Thank you, that's carried. And we can do second reading this evening. And then we will postpone to a later time, third reading. So Trustee Kellogg, I'll ask you to do second reading.
Okay, that the Board of Education of School District 69 Qualicum gives second reading to adopt the School District number 69 Qualicum annual budget bylaw in the amount of $72,742,820 for the 2026-2027 fiscal year.
Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Could I have a seconder, please, to the motion? Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Any other questions, trustees? Trustee Austin.
Thank you. I'm just clarifying, this will be first and second. It would still need to have third reading. Will that third reading happen at our regular board meeting in June rather than just some future date?
It's up to the will of the board as to when they'd like to have third reading. We can call a special board meeting if you choose to on this one item.
I would like to leave it to my preference is to leave it to our regular board meeting in June, and that perhaps gives some time if your senior staff is thinking of entertaining some of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Austin. Trustee Young.
Just a couple of things on page 44 of our package. Just a note, this is just in fun, you guys. So get your don't get upset. But you know, if, for example, the board were acclaimed next fall, we would save $85,930.
And no, we still have to run the election. All the paperwork, everything's printed, and there's scrutiny. No, I don't think we can dodge that one.
You don't think so, eh?
I don't think so. Not if we're acclaimed. No, the process is ahead of even being the money spent ahead of being acclaimed, the rental of
Oh,
facilities and hiring
darn.
of
Okay.
so,
Oh,
but nice
darn.
try,
Oh, darn. Nice
but nice
try.
try.
Okay, so the other thing I just wanted to point out, and this is something that has just really hit me in the last little while, is under special purpose funds, the budget there. You go down as far as the seamless daycare, and the rest of those funds actually, we hope will never be removed, but could be removed at any given time, I think. And we've seen that over time that, you know, you get these great programs, and then I think I spoke to this the last time because it's really a rant I have. And then, you know, they're good for 3 years and we pilot them and they're fabulous, and then suddenly the funding's gone. So let's just be aware of how much that's based on what a government might think, and it's not our level of government that thinks that way.
Yeah. and I
Anyway,
think we
thanks.
we have been advised that the seamless daycare will end at the end of next year.
Yeah,
We have been notified. Yes.
it's actually this year, I believe. I don't think it's in the budget for this year.
What you're seeing
be
is
wrong,
that,
but-
yeah, it's eliminated for the 26, 27 year.
So,
Yeah.
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 You've got
And
it.
that includes the mental health grant also.
Yes.
Type of program that then the money gets pulled away from us after the fact in a couple of years' time or something.
And continue and will continue to pressure the budgets as we talk about this, because the question becomes, do you move it into operating for consideration? And again, this is truly the nuts and the bolts of it all, is the evaporation of funding, the evaporation of supports coming from the ministry that we are having to grapple with. Do we this support group or this teaching or this assignment or that assignment kind of thing? That's the balancing that we are having this discussion on, is the fact that there's not enough money in the wallet, and we've got, again, competing priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. So I have a mover and trustee Kellogg, seconded by trustee Kurland for second reading of the budget bylaw. I'll call a question. All those in favor? An abstention to trustee Austin. So it is carried. And we will.
No, that's an opposed. Opposed.
No, sorry, opposed, sorry, abstention, opposed, sorry, my apology, opposed. So we will, and with trustee Austin's comment, consider the final reading of the budget to our June board meeting. Very worthwhile conversation, trustees, and I appreciate all of the work, of course, of senior staff to color between the lines for us on some of these things, that this is not our day-to-day language and type of things that we have at our fingertips, but you're willing to help us along. So the policy committee of the whole met, and we have 3 policies to bring forward. So I would move policy 302, communities and volunteer involvement in our schools, that the recommendation that the Board of Education approve third and final reading to adopt the revisions to board policy 302, communities and volunteer involvement in our school district and its attendant administrative procedure. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, trustee Kellogg. This has had tremendous input, I believe, in our committee of the whole meetings, particularly around the criminal record check piece, and I appreciate the parent involvement and weighing in on how this affects their day-to-day activities at schools. But I think we had a very fulsome and balanced discussion also with our senior staff and principals and vice principals in the schools. So moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Further questions, trustees? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor of final third reading? Trustee Austin, abstaining, contrary minded.
No, I'm in
In
favor.
favor. In favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Carried unanimously. 701 student discipline, that the Board of Education School District 69 approves third and final reading to adopt the revisions to Board Policy 701 student discipline and its attendant administrative procedures yet again as well. An extensive amount of work with our principals and vice principals and folks on the ground that handle this. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. Are there any final questions, trustees? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Trustee Austin.
Okay, just a minute. Yeah, sorry, I'm just quickly, I reviewed it earlier and then I couldn't. Where did we put in here? I can't find it right off. No, never mind. I withdraw. Withdraw my question. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I'll, no further questions. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Carried. Board bylaw, number 1, Board of Education. That the Board of Education, School District 69, Qualicum approve first reading to adopt the revisions to Board Bylaw 1, the Board of Education. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Trustee Kurland. Just to add commentary for folks that want to follow, this is highlighted in yellow in your package, and these are requirements by us to have in policy prior to the elections and in policy prior to July, in fact, by Elections BC, and predominantly entertains language on where public notice is, places that public notice must be displayed, where people can see the voters lists or the order of nominations and the balloting and things like that. And so this is kind of mandated for us to do. This does not include any other conversations about the bylaw itself at the policy committee. It just refers to what we need to be compliant with Elections BC and the upcoming fall election. Trustee Young.
Yeah, thank you for giving context to that, because that was part of what I wanted to say. But also, I just want to, as we move into looking at the governance, the thousands policies, a lot of the thousands policies are related to this Board Bylaw 1, and I think trustees and partners need to know, keep this Board Bylaw 1 close, because you'll want to kind of refer back and forth to it, I think, as we get into those governance policies. And yes, we will be talking about this again when it comes to bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, it's been moved by myself, seconded by Trustee Kurland. All those in favor, call the questions. All those in favor, thank you. I would like to put the board on notice that I would like to bring this forward in June for second and third reading in the same meeting, because we are required to have this in policy by July before the actual elections in October. So just so folks know, we will do 2 readings in 1 meeting on this basis, that this is required to be passed by July. No reports from representative or outside organizations. You have before you, excuse me, for information, the draft schedule for board meetings 2026, 2027. I just encourage folks to look at it, because we do need, we have in policy that we provide this information at this time of year to the public. Trustee Austin.
Yeah, and just sort of as a reminder, this would, particularly this year, would be an incredible, this is a draft for sure, because depending on the makeup of the new board, we have had board members that have been full-time students at VIU. We've had board members that work full-time. And so we try and we sit down with board members and look and see what their best times and hours are, and to try and accommodate that. So I'm just putting that out there that this is most definitely a draft, and it could change very
But
readily.
what does hold is a regular board meeting is in policy to be held on that. But the
yeah, no.
rest certainly is for conversation.
Absolutely. I'm talking mostly about committee
Yes.
of the wholes. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you for that. So there's no new or unfinished business or board correspondence. The public question period is open now. Please raise your hand so that I can see folks, because we've got 6 pages of folks in attending. Ms. Heinrich.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair. This is more of a point of privilege for you, through you, Chair, to the rest of the board. It would be great and thoughtful if I could encourage the trustees when they speak about the working conditions of the employees, that a flippant tone is not used in comparators, and also that there is no value added to the various groups that are working. So we don't feel that we're being compared and valued to in terms of how hard we work. This really hits me to the core as an educator who is in their 36th year. And my dad used to tease me. He said, obviously you haven't figured it out in Alberta because you're working harder than you ever did before. And of course, this conversation happened before he passed, but he noted that my commitment to this work, and I'm not alone. All my colleagues are working very hard. And so I would just encourage trustees not to use a flippant tone when talking about prior assignments, prior work, and move forward to, we can recognize that you're doing very difficult work, but the work that you must do may have a direct and deep effect to those working on the ground. So I just would like to make note of that moving forward. I don't need any discussion or any talk about today's meeting. I would just encourage moving forward that we use very thoughtful language and no comparators to where we hold value in our workers. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Norberta. Any other questions, folks? Jenna, Ms. Stavros.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I wasn't planning on asking a question, but this has been on my mind, and I think maybe it's a good time, which is one of the things I haven't seen in any of the budget discussions to date, or even I think last year, was the idea of looking at revenue generation and ways to increase, bringing in some of that money. I don't know if most people know that school districts are by law allowed to create corporations and create their own local revenue. And I think, from our old what was it? The international program and leases and other things, I feel like we're down about 2 million, which is kind of what we're looking for here. And I'm just wondering if it's too late in this process or where that question comes up again, because I don't think anybody here believes the province is going to be handing out, fistfuls of cash anytime soon. But are there opportunities to generate funds locally that's also supporting education so that we're not at this same spot next year? I'm not sure who that could be directed to, but it's just a question that repeatedly has come up for me is, why aren't we trying to increase what's coming into the household to cover those bills? Thank you.
I think a very valuable question for sure, Jenna, and I think we try very hard with the international program. I think we've taken the international program quite conservatively on the revenue picture this year due to the world situation. The notion of corporate or corporate entities being involved in education, I think that that would take a very hard and serious look to see how that could produce a revenue stream. I'm not saying, I mean, we have had corporate relationships before, but it has not been a wise road to travel because it can disappear or be taken away from you. But I take your point. And I think in a couple of ways, trustees have challenged our thinking in that vein. But it's we're in the business of education. It's as you can see, a daunting task to provide that and to start investing with our senior leaders. Other strategies might have us being a bit careful and certainly cautious about those next steps. But I appreciate the suggestion. I have Trustee Kurland and then Superintendent Jory.
Well, I think Dr. Jory's proposal for the legacy fund is in that vein to generate capital to ease things along for the next 25 years or so.
Yeah,
great idea. I think.
No, absolutely good reminder. Yep, that Dr. Jory.
Yeah, thanks, Trustee Kurland. And what we're referring to here is selling our properties and rather than spending that money, putting them into high yield savings accounts and having them generate an amount that will sustain us over a long period of time to help take the pressure off of capital costs and things like White Fleet computers and switches and such, but also potentially projects. I do want to add that, though, a couple of comments. We do have an international program. It is quite robust for a school district our size. It's generated a lot of money over the years. But it does present some challenges. And what we've seen in recent years is it's become quite competitive out there. And due to different kinds of international situations, and of course, the terrible tragedy up in Tumbler Ridge, revenues subscriptions are down. It's become harder for us to fill our seats. And so there are some reductions in our budget that are reflective of that. One of the other ways that we've generated some revenue historically is through the building rentals, renting out space. We have been, in some regards, are great landlords. We've charged favorable numbers. It's been very popular with the community, but we haven't really recouped the actual cost over time. And what we found ourselves doing is in a situation where we're sort of maintaining the user costs, but we weren't maintaining the overall we weren't sustaining the buildings properly. In other words, we were not covering the long-term roof replacement. We're not covering the long-term HVAC replacement. We're not covering the long-term building envelope costs. And because we're not funded provincially for buildings that don't contain students that are learning, it's really on the backs of our current administration and operations team. And so we're trying to get out of that business, noting that it's become more of a burden and in high risk over time. However, if we can turn that into revenue and use it as a bit of a piggy bank, as we mentioned, we hope to be able to provide relief not just in the near future, but into the distant future as well. Hopefully we can still keep our international program thriving. It may not be as big as it once was, but we certainly appreciate the additional things we're able to purchase with that fund. I'm not sure where else to go with this. I know some districts have explored some other opportunities. That may be something that we may be able to discuss in the future, but I don't have anything top of mind right now. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Philip. And Okay, additional, sorry, commentary, sure.
Oh, I was just going to clarify that I think what I was getting at is that I believe some districts actually have like business committees, and that rather than partnering with a corporation, a district can actually create a corporation to do things like manage, properties for profit, and then feed that back in. So that's my kind of understanding, and I just wanted to make sure that I was clear in that question, but I'll let it move on to other folks. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Amos, and then I have Megan.
Right,
Keep your
and
hand up.
just to comment on that, yes, some school districts, 15 years ago, the School Act was modified to allow school districts to create business arms or business entities. And so I know of two, Kamloops, School District 73, they've got a business entity that offers distributed learning to international students taking courses in their remote countries. And again, and I think, because I believe that they've got the license to deliver BC curriculum to offshore students. But that license isn't given to everybody. It's clearly just in favor of Kamloops at this point. Saanich, and I don't know if they still have it, had a business entity that was offering or working on a program, a software program to replace MyEd, of the predecessor of MyEd. And so they invested heavily in it, kind of thing, and it didn't take. So there's been limited success, I'll just put it that way, in terms of these business entities, in terms of what school districts were able to generate. It allowed them to do other stuff, but it really didn't create any kind of impetus to be able to support the existing programs that they were delivering to their local school districts. But again, as these things come up, we certainly don't turn away the offer of a grant. We are a charitable organization. I'll put the ad out that we do accept like grants, and we do accept donations. We're happy to give receipts in their favor. But beyond that, we continue to pursue avenues of generating revenues, but sometimes, again, it's not always successful over the longer term, maybe in the short term.
Thanks, Mr. Amos. And I have Megan. If you could come on screen, thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Megan. I'm at Arrowview as a parent. I hang out on the PAC there. I don't love public speaking. 2 quick questions, if you could please clarify. I thought that I heard 2 conflicting pieces of information earlier in the meeting. One voice that had said that the trustee benefits were out of control and already happening, done deal. And then another voice perhaps that said trustee benefits are not happening. If that could be clarified for me simply, I would appreciate it. That was my first question. My second question is, I'd like to gratefully acknowledge all the work that's gone into this difficult budget. I'm also grateful that it has not passed. And I'm wondering where there is room for community voices between now and the next month when this goes to the 3rd reading. Not trying to do your job, but it takes a village, and we are the village. And we're not just parents. A lot of us have tons of experience in so many other fields, and you wouldn't know that because we come with the parent label, but we would love to help where there's room. And I'm just wondering where that room exists in the next month for the village.
I'll take the first question, and I'll let Dr. Jory take the second. The part of your question about trustee remuneration and benefits, that was consideration presented. We must set our remuneration prior to the election, and so that will come forward in June if there was to be any increase in trustee stipend. Benefits is certainly likely to be not on the table, simply because it doesn't exist in the benefits world as to how we are not technically employees of the district, but sometimes there are some districts that label us trustees as employees of the district, but this is not common. And the practice to finding the supplier for said benefits hasn't been found. It was an idea. And but we have.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank
Dr.
you for
Jory.
clarifying.
Actually, Chair, I put my hand up for the first question, which you answered very clearly, and I'm going to defer to you and the rest of the board for the second question.
I think please go through your DPAC. DPAC is and engage with us as trustees. I certainly received your correspondence, and any further different questions and things like that, I'd be more than happy to answer. I don't think there will be any formalized town hall or something about the budget. We will announce when the second reading takes place at the June board meeting, and folks if you'd like to come as a delegation, that's an opportunity for you at the beginning of the agenda to do so. And from there, I would use your DPAC channels to present information to us or share information with us. Trustee Young.
Yeah, I thought we had already talked about remuneration, trustee remuneration, and I thought it was off the table. I certainly would not vote in favor of any increase in remuneration. And I thought the benefits idea was totally off the table too. So I'm wrong, and I stand to be corrected. And I guess on the other point is the budget survey. Is the budget survey still open, Mr. Amos? Can people still respond? So there is a budget survey online, and more than willing to have folks complete that. And there's a spot at the end for all kinds of other comments. And so there's lots of ways to be involved still. This has been a long process, and there have been public meetings all the way along. So hopefully you'll feel that you are heard.
Trustee Austin.
Just very quickly, I think there is some confusion because of the idea of the remuneration as well as the benefits were brought up, I think, at a meeting in February, and it's never been revisited formally. It's sort of been discussed informally. It's really only been discussed formally in the context of the budget, that we don't see that as a line item, things like trustee benefit. But that's one of the things that I would like to see is a further breakdown. We have a line item that says governance, but it's very broad. Whereas if it was broken down a little bit more, we would see that there's nothing written in there for benefits or nothing written in there as a salary increase. I just wanted to point that out, that we haven't formally perhaps rejected some of the concepts. Thank you.
Any other questions, folks? Seeing none, I thank everybody for joining us this evening. I appreciate Trustee Austin. Oh,
no, sorry, that's the hand thing, up and down.
It's going up and down. It's going up and down. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's been a long meeting for everybody, but I think all the discussion has been very valuable, thoughtful, and certainly takes into account many of the dynamics that the board has to take into account when presenting and approving a budget. My thanks again, yes, as trustees have said, to the senior staff and Mr. Amos for clearly walking us down the path of all these numbers and things. And could I call for a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Trustee Kellogg. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.